everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of the Night Bite. This is when Josh always says, "I'm Josh," and I always say, "I'm
I'm
Emily." And that's
Josh.
oh, you can still actually hear him. I guess I didn't have him muted. He's actually backstage. Funny thing is, he's traveling for work this week. And so we'll see him in a minute. He'll come on with our guest. But honestly, there's only so many screens I can make happen at a time. And so you're going to get the fishing report from me this evening. So I guess I should go and say welcome and thanks for being here. It is a fabulous time of the year to be fishing. Water temps are really starting to come down, and we are noticing that people are pulling their boats. That's always a little bit sad. We always like when people are out there and enjoying things and the recreation and all of that cool stuff. But as a fisherman, I always actually really like when the waterways empty out a little bit. I guess I'll be even super honest. In the fall, there's a few fishing spots that we have that just the bite is right. If you hit the spot and the time and all the things and check all the boxes at the right time. And I don't want people to know where I am when I'm out there. Whatever. It's about sharing the sport and having fun. And ultimately, I guess what I have to share is the fishing report. So like I said, water temps are coming down. They are in that lower 60s, depending on where you're fishing. And if you're down south, I think it's going to be a little bit warmer than that, right? But either way, we are trending in that direction. Well, I was going to say towards ice, and that's getting ahead of ourselves. So at least towards real fall fishing. And we, I guess, battled the wind this weekend. There were so many people that they were not able to get out at all. I heard all kinds of gale warnings and all kinds of stuff. And so I think that really kept people off the water. And I can see why. We did on Saturday find a little body of water that had tons of little like bays. It was one of those lakes where it's like in, out, in, out, in, out the whole way around. It's not like a round lake. And the nice thing about that, there was almost always a little spot that we could hide behind some trees or behind a bend or behind wherever it was. The nice thing about this is I think we used that wind to our advantage in a little bit, because what we were able to do is sit on the edges, those seams. You could almost see, I'm going to call it current in a lake. I know that there's no current in a lake, right? But the wind was pushing the water so hard, it was almost creating these current seams. And so when we were able to get the boat blocked from just enough wind that we could get like a bobber to float along these seams, that is when we were getting the bites. So I think the fish were kind of stacked up in places that maybe aren't typical of fall, but the wind was so strong that that's just how it worked out, and that's fine. I guess the only other thing I have to say, it was a great multi-species weekend. So as these water temps are coming down, all things are eating. And that was really great this past weekend, and I guess coming up this weekend. So if anybody else has a fishing report or things like that, drop us a comment in that comment section. Let us know where you are, or maybe what you're fishing for, what those water temps are, because this is the time of the year to watch that trend. Those waters are cooling down from the north to the south. And if you kind of know where others are at, you might have an idea of what the bite will be like. I was going to say what the bite is biting on. That doesn't really make sense. So I guess one of the cool things is if you are struggling with the bite, we have a really great product that we're going to be bringing to you tonight, because what we're doing, I guess each Tuesday and Thursday from here until December, we are coming to you live with vendors from the Wisconsin Ice Fishing Expo. And that is a super fun thing, because all of what we talk about here, you will be able to come and experience in person at the Wisconsin Ice Fishing Expo. So if you haven't visited their Facebook page or their website, there is lots of really great information there. So check it out. But let's bring in our guest of honor, Mark from BAITLOAD. Give me a second to change my screens. There we go. So thank you so much for being here.
Good evening.
Hey, everybody.
All right.
Tuesday.
You talked about the wind. I tell you what, that was something this weekend. Unfortunately,
was it windy everywhere?
It was project weekend for me. So I was on a roof trying to shingle and this stuff. And if there's one job that makes beer taste really good, that would be it. So
I'm not sure if I think I would be scared to be a roofer that's high up, but in wind, that's really scary.
Yeah, but it was the last, got to get it done while there's still some warmth in that sun to have them tacked
Yeah.
down. So it was a weekend. Otherwise, it was lake every weekend this summer. So
Yeah. Oh yeah.
we had some fun.
That's my plan. So we have a few people tuning in. Hello to everybody. A few comments asking where Josh is. So here you go. Now he's here.
Right here.
I think at the very beginning of the show, I mentioned that he is actually on a business trip for work. So he's gracious enough to try to join in from, you're in Michigan, right?
Yeah, I'm at the Little River Casino Resort Hotel in wonderful Manistee, Michigan. It's pretty awesome over here, actually. There's a lot of stuff to do. I'm here on a water quality workshop. So we were out by the lake on the other side of Lake Michigan. We're used to the west coast of Lake Michigan. I'm on the east coast this week, and it's really beautiful out here. And so if the wind's preventing you from going out fishing, the leaves are really looking good right now. So it's might be time to just take a drive.
That is true. Lots of great fall activities going on. I actually just posted about Northern Lights last night, fall colors. Yeah, lots of cool stuff going on. So ultimately, fishing is our hobby of choice, but there's a lot of good ones out there. And I would love to, I guess, bring us back to the topic a little bit. So Mark, we are here to talk a little bit about BAITLOAD. And I think we've run into you a time or two before, but I know that there's people here that are new to you and to BAITLOAD. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, Mark Blars. I'm a fisherman, hunter, love the outdoors. I work for Bobcat Company during the day, so I have a full-time job, and this ended up being a hobby. I stumbled across an idea, ice fishing Christmas Eve. I had 2 hours, and my wife's like, "You'll be back for church on time. Don't get distracted." Of course, when you go ice fishing, and if you get on a bite, that's easy to do. And I drilled my holes. It was below zero. The wind was blowing. And I'm going to check my holes before I bother setting up my portable. So I go down and I catch a 12-inch crappie. I go back down and catch a 14-inch bass. Go back down and catch a 2-foot northern. Then it was bluegill. So the bite was on. I didn't want to stop. And pretty soon you're reaching in to get your wax worms, and my fingers quit working on me, and I can't even feel them. And when the hook was in my thumb and there's blood all over, I'm like, there's got to be a better way. So that's kind of where it all started. And during COVID, we were at Con Expo out in Las Vegas, and right when everything got shut down. So we came back and we were quarantined at home for 2 weeks. And my wife quarantined me to the basement for 2 weeks because she was scared. And so what do you do at night? So I had a tip-up design idea, and so I got a modeling software package and created that. But then how am I going to make it? I don't have a machine shop or something. So I bought a 3D printer and printed it. So it worked well, but it took 24 hours to print. So I decided, it's probably not going to be a good business case. So my 3D printer sat there collecting dust until Christmas Eve, and then when this idea came up, I think I could do something about this. So I just needed a way to hold the bait so I could leave my gloves on. That was what I was trying to accomplish. And so if there's something that could hold the bait and I could still bait my hook, that's what I was looking for. So I couldn't find anything on the market. So I had this idea, and I noticed, wax worms are about the same size as a 22 shell. So what if we have a little clip that's like a rotary 22 clip that we lower our bait in before we go out. And there's a hook slot in each one of these area positions. So there's your closed position. So none's going to fall out, but this cover snaps on, and all I have to do is rotate, take my hook down, and skewer my worm just like that. So this ends up being your bait handle. You don't have to touch the bait. You can do this with a gloved handle. So whether you have a small hook, like a lot of ice fishing for perch or crappie, bigger jig in the summer I usually use, you just go down and find that first slot, rotate the cover, and then go down and skewer your worm and come back out with your worm on your hook, just like that. So I didn't have to work real hard to do that. And this closed position is also bait stop. So if I want to push it farther on my hook and put another one on, I just rotate. If maybe I have a treble hook, I can load up a treble hook real fast, just like that. So it's super fast. You can get back down in that school before they move on, keep pulling them off the top and keep fishing. So if you get on a bite, you're going to catch more fish faster. But then it'll go back into the existing housing. A lot of bait stores carry, at least in the Minnesota area. I found who makes it. It slips back in there for storage. So I'll put it after this is loaded. I was surprised, but I'm like, well, how long will they last in here? And they last a month or two, but just about as long as in the sawdust. And I had them side by side, and I've done this now for a couple seasons. And yeah, they'll last. Once you load this, you just between your weekends put it in the fridge, keep them cool so they're slows them down. And when they're cool, they load easier too. When they get really squiggly, a little harder to load. But so then the next question was, well, how do you get them in there? And
okay, before you get
Yeah.
so this is perfect, but we actually have a question, so I'm going to jump in if that's okay.
Yep.
Jeremy is asking, does this work with spikes and waxworms?
Well, spikes are even a little harder to hold on to because they're smaller. So this slot was designed for a waxworm. That hole size was designed for a waxworm, but it also works with spikes. Now, the thing about spikes is, those little slots, they get really active when they're warm. So they will actually try to crawl out the slot. So I always put it back in the container before I put it in my pocket. But the nice thing about this too is I don't have to have a big bulky container because it'll stay warm in my pocket. I don't have to bend over to get my bait. It's just in my pocket. And, or else my buddy, he's from Pennsylvania, and he saw it and his eyes got this big. He goes, "Where'd you get that?" I said, "Well, I made it." He goes, "Can you put one on the lanyard?" He goes, we river fish trout. We use waxworm for river fishing trout. And when you're out wading in the river, that'd be great to have it around your neck. So I put a D-loop on the cover so you can have the standard cover or a D-loop cover. And I used it all summer. I didn't have to bend over in a boat to get my bait. And then when you're kayak fishing, it's like a third hand because when I'm fishing, I'll take the container and put it in my pocket, and I can rotate this with one hand and bait my hook with the other hand. So in the kayak, it's super handy. And then in the middle, I was usually in the summer, I'll use a plastic and I'll put a waxworm tip on it for the 1-2 punch. And I'm out fishing the people using crappie minnows in my boat. And then pretty soon they want to use what I'm using. It's kind of funny. And then, but I'll put a plastic on a jig head with a waxworm tip on the end of the hook, and it's like candy for crappie, and it works really well. So anyway, a couple tips there.
Okay, so this is awesome, and I know you already said this, but you were nice enough to share one of these with me. To be honest, I think that these are so cool. This is right up my alley. I'm so excited about this, but I don't know, as you were talking, I was trying to show off kind of these little slots, how you can close it up. Going backwards in the camera, so it's closed. And then you can rotate to all those different slots. I love the question about spikes and waxworms because actually I picked up some waxworms because I wanted to make sure that I was trying this, to be honest. And I was in the store and actually, because I had mentioned before the show that I went and I was secretly complaining that the waxworms are like half dead. They're like half black. But the other thing I noticed is in the containers, some of the waxworms were huge. Like in winter, sometimes you pick through what are the small ones, you leave them behind. And I was like shocked. And I actually wondered if like the big waxworm would be too big. But now I'm seeing this slot size and I can totally see why, a spike could totally fit in there. But I think even if I ran into like the big waxworm, I think even that would work.
Yeah, what you'll find is they're pliable, and the big waxworms, a lot of times when they're warm and active, they're short and fat and they're squiggly. You put them in a fridge overnight, cool them down, and they're more like a 22 shell. And that's what this is kind of designed after, about the same size as a 22 shell. And then they drop right in. So they're a lot easier to load by hand when they're cool. And yeah, So anyway, that's another pointer. But going back to the spikes, when they get active, they'll crawl out. So I put it back in here. But I mean, it also works. Some people like to hook the spike right on the end, but you can go in the slot and do that too. And some people will pull it through. I don't like to leave the guts inside there. I like to go back out the top. So I have all the good stuff for the fish.
Okay, that's actually a really interesting point that you bring that up, because we have a guide friend, and I won't say who or where or whatever. And I hope this person's listening. They're probably not. Somebody else also coming to the Wisconsin Fishing Expo or Ice Fishing Expo. Yeah, but this guide, their key is that once you have the wax worm on the hook, that you like pinch open, tear apart like half the body, like make half of it like gross in whatever way that means to you. And so that's a really interesting theory about if you can pull it, pull the hook through the top and have that very whole plump worm, or, you can pull it halfway out, squish half that body, or like you're saying, rip it out through that hole, and you're going to have like that gross floaty wax worm.
It's going to be gross. Yep. It's funny because some people come by and they see I have live wax worms and are grossed out by it. And so I ask them, do you know what they eat? And most people don't realize this, but wax worms eat wax and honey. They are a parasite that feeds on beehives. Mm-hmm. So they're not as gross as a maggot. Now a spike, that turns into a fly, but a wax worm will turn into a moth. So I don't let them go because I like honey too, but feed them to the fish.
Yeah.
Feed them to the fish. That's the right answer. Okay, so as we are moving on, one of the things that you were about to talk about is loading this. Because like you're saying, some people are a little bit maybe squeamish or don't want to touch worms, or I don't know, whatever the reason is. I'm not here to judge, maybe mobility issues. So are we taking each individual worm and having to cram it into every single hole?
We have a couple of things. First of all, you get your wax worms in containers like this. I don't like these because these they're all over my pocket in the end by the time I'm done, because they just crunch. So this thing's not going to crush in your pocket. So that's why I designed it to fit in these containers, because they don't crush in your pocket, right? So I started out doing this, and it was so worth the time to load these in the pickup. I'd buy a couple of these containers at the gas station on my way to the lake, and I would manually load my container in the pickup before I go out. So it's not too bad, but you're digging in the sawdust, and you just take one and you dig in there and grab it. And then, try not to get sawdust with it, and you just drop it in each slot. So just like loading a 22 clip. So if you've ever loaded 22 shells, it's not much different, right? Now
they're warm and wiggly.
Right. So I'm making a mess in my pickup. So that's where the next gadget came along, the waxy sifter. So it's basically a pretty simple design, but the top comes off. You can take your wax worms, dump them in there. Now, if you buy the big 500 counts, which I do know, they'll last me a couple months when I ship fish every weekend. But I only fill it up to the top of this because you want to leave some. If you pack it too full, it doesn't agitate and it doesn't sift as well. But once I get this loaded, I have bungees on my production ones, so they don't come apart on you when you're shaking it. But if you got big hands, you can just go like that. So you just shake it like that, and sawdust goes through to the bottom. You can see the sawdust going in the bottom, and then the wax worms are here in the tray. So that makes loading it a lot easier. You don't have to dig through the sawdust. So some people just have this in your house, and they've got a lanyard connection and stuff too for it. But now loading it's a lot easier, so I can load it pretty quick. Doesn't take too long. Just drop one in each slot. But since it's like loading 22 shells, they make speed loaders for your ammunition, right? So we played around a little bit, and it was a trick. We had to come up with ways so they wouldn't plug up on you and stick to each other. And that's why they put them in the sawdust. I learned from some bait handlers, they said they put them in the sawdust so they don't get all wet and mushy. So it keeps them separated. It's like bedding for them, but then they can mix bran and syrup or whatever they feed them. But
okay, wait, that's actually, thank you for saying that, because I always thought that the wood shavings were mixed with just tiny bits of wax. I knew that they ate wax, like wax worms. That actually, but still good point. I thought there was wax in it. I thought they were trying to feed them.
Well, I was reading online. There's some different ways you can raise waxworms, and it talks about what you can feed them. So anyway, I came up with this speed loader. Now this keys right into this slot, and so that's kind of that helps orient it. That closed position there, the bait stop position. So that plugs in, and then I'll push down on this valve in the middle. So the trick to this to make it work is that so they won't plug up. It spreads them out and brings them back together. So that was the trick. But then also this valve pops out for easy clean out. So now I can take my sifted worms and just dump them in here. Now I'm going to turn my camera down here so you can see this. So now to load my thing, instead of having to touch each one, you should start the timer now. I think we're loaded. All right. So some of them doubled up, and that's fine because they're already in the right orientation. I can just slide them over, and if I see any slot that's missing one, I can just drop it straight down. So I don't have to reach into the sawdust to grab it. So now I'm going to take my other doubles out so I don't squish them when I put the cover on. And we're ready to go fishing. Put the cover on, we're ready to go. Put it back in here for storage. Now this thing is still sitting here, right? I set it back in the tray. So I'm going to dump these back in here. My original thought with this valve is it doesn't totally squish them, but it puts a little pressure on them so they don't keep falling out. But it's easiest just to dump them right back out and then load your next one. So that valve, just easy clean out, just comes right apart. So they just fall out of there. So,
okay, yeah, so one of the things that I don't often do is recommend products for people like guides, because guides put so much wear and tear on products. They're going through things, yada, yada. I don't know. They have their own method and their own ways, but I actually think that this would be perfect for a guide. And here is why. Because when you are the kind of person that is loading waxy after waxy after waxy for clients, or like all of these little containers, how many waxies are left in what container? First of all, this allows a way that's super easy to see how many worms are in a container, right? But it's going to be super easy to load all of that up for no matter how many clients you have that day, that week, that whatever. And that you could just have these little containers ready to go and swap out. And again, for guides, because it's clients, and that's a most likely group of people, in my opinion, that like wouldn't want to touch worms or I mean, waxies aren't that gross, right? But that is a perfect solution for getting people out on the water, your friends, your family, whoever. That is so cool.
Yeah, I have a couple of guides are using them. So the one guide, he says, yeah, you just pull that out of your pocket and bait their hook for them. And they're like, what did you just do? And I had a coworker, this is great for kids also. And, one coworker saw it and his eyes got big. He said, where'd you get that? Well, I made it. And I was trying to figure out, well, what would you pay for it? And he wouldn't give me a number. He says, it's priceless. He goes, finally he said, Mark, quit asking. He goes, I went ice fishing 3 times last summer with my 3 kids. And I didn't get to fish once because I was baiting their hooks all the time. And so then he bought a kit from me, and he said, yeah, I was able to give my oldest son one. He could bait his own hook, where he couldn't prior. And then I was much faster with the other 2. So I had actually had time to fish. So he was, he had, and then another coworker had one, and he goes, you should have saw my father-in-law, the look in my father-in-law's face when my 6-year-old daughter baited my 2-year-old son's hook for him. so yeah, it is handy, and you can just pull it out of your pocket and you're back down real quick. So, speaking of guides, I've got some different kits and stuff. But before I get that, I'll talk about another version. I came out with this actually at the show last year. It was the first time I had it in public. So I was trying to figure out, how people would get around my patent. So there's different configurations. So this is just a straight line configuration, the same thing. This is the Waxy Wizard Mag for magazine. So it's basically a straight line version of the same concept. You just press on these covers with your thumbs and slide sideways. So I figured, well, might as well make it available. And, it's another option you have. And I'm trying different colors. You can, all kinds
That's
of
awesome.
colors. So seeing what people like, I think the fluorescent colors seem to go the best, or glow in the dark. Yeah. So now coming back to your guide, so there's some different kits, right? So we have the Fisher kit, which you get 2 pucks in the sifter. So you manually load them. So I think this one you save $10, at the package deal. So then at the show last year over in Wisconsin, there was a customer that said, you need to come out with one of each. Don't make me buy all of them. So we came out with call it the starter kit. So this one, again, you save $10 on it, but you get a speed loader, the sifter, and a bait cartridge. So that's the second kit. So, and then the one that I recommend for most fishermen is the system kit. So it's the whole system. It's the same thing, but only thing, you get 3 cartridges. When you're out fishing, you're going to wish you had more than one. And whoever's fishing with you is going to want to borrow one. So, if you have family or whatever, you get three cartridges. And again, if you buy a 150 count or 250 count, you can load them all up and have them in the fridge ready to go. So you were mentioning guides. Well, we came out with the guide kit. So this one is $35 off, and it has 8 cartridges. But, I think I found a different name for this kit. It's called the pontoon kit now. So this is for the grandparents that have a lot of grandkids, all out pan fishing off the pontoon. This is excellent for that. Everybody can have their own cartridge. There's no fighting, and everybody's catching more fish faster. So
yeah,
anyway, the guide kit or pontoon kit, it's got 2 names.
Well, wait, I love that name, because here's the other thing is when you're on a pontoon and everyone is fighting over bait, and especially when you have kids on the boat, here's what you get is all the feet like pounding, running around the boat. And
Where's
okay,
the
I'm one of
bait?
yeah. Well, and I'm one of those people, I'm like not super convinced that the fish are always like really touchy to sound and stuff. But when you have that much going on, they really, really can be. And so that's a really fun way to make sure that you're like still on that bite and not losing it when the kids are between bites. So that's actually really fun. The pontoon, even winter, that's appropriate, whatever.
Yeah, well, yep. How many people do you have in your ice hall? So it's kind of funny now that I had some of these out there for a season, getting the feedback. People will come up and start, oh man, that thing really works, like you said. And one of the guys says, I don't have sawdust in my ice house anymore. He goes, that used to drive me nuts. There's sawdust everywhere, no sawdust. And same thing in the boat in the summer, no sawdust. So
okay, here's where I don't want sawdust is like occasionally they would get stuck to like my hand towels and stuff, whatever that comes out. But actually, people who are out fishing, well, I guess I'll even throw myself under the bus. In the beginning of the show, I was talking about how, like, in fall, occasionally fish will school up in places that I don't know. It's better maybe if people don't know where I'm at. Okay, right. So in ice, occasionally, maybe you're on a crib, maybe you're whatever, you find the bite. When you are that person who is using all these wax worms and you're digging for them and you're like, whatever, and then all those shavings stick to the ice. And I swear they like never freeze over. Like once these shavings fall on the ice, I feel like I can forever see who stood at that hole for how long. Right. And so when you are in a situation where you are not dropping all of that little stuff behind, actually, you're going to hide your holes from yourself. You're going to be like, how do I find that one? And now you can't anymore.
Good point.
Well, and I like the sifter design because although you can separate the wax worms from the sawdust, like we previously mentioned earlier in the show, the sawdust is there to kind of keep separation with those wax worms. And when you pulled out those doubles, you put them back in the sifter, you put the lid back on, but then you can flip it back over and reapply the sawdust to the ones that you haven't used. So now you have a container that
I'll just do this to these,
Yeah, there you go.
Right.
So then you can just re-sift it out just as easy,
right,
and load them when you need them. So that's a really cool benefit to that sifter.
Yeah.
Okay, so funny side note, I guess I don't know why I thought about this, but before this show, I was like, oh, I gotta get some little waxies and try it. But I had said the first time I went, my store was out of them, and I started wondering in the last few days if like Tic Tacs would work as a backup. So I'm glad that did not have to figure that out tonight, right?
Well, if you look at this shape, any bait that's about that size, about 4.5, 5 millimeters diameter, a little over an inch long, will fit in there. So even like fish eggs or any other small bait, some people will slice up leeches. They stay on your hook a little better. Roll them on your pants, get them dried off, slice them up, put them in there. And again, you don't have to touch them when you're fishing. So, there's a lot of uses for this. One of my buddies likes it because he'll put his tie bobbers in there because there's a hole in the bottom. You can run your line right through there. So those little bobber ties will actually fit in here. So you can organize your tie bobbers and not have them all over your tackle box.
Oh, that's so
there
funny.
you go.
That's cool.
So what this originally was, the hole in the bottom was, I'm thinking if you had like one of those needles or whatever, and you wanted to push a leader through, that you could, but it has other benefits.
Yes. Well, and the other thing that I always thought about is, if this opens in your pocket, but I'm thinking like it's not going to turn. Like once it's in the clear case, that's not something, it's not like coming off. This is not coming apart. And so you said like it's not going to crack either. But the other thing that I worry about is just having a pocket full of worms. And so I'm pretty convinced actually that's not going to happen.
It's a lot less likely.
Yeah, a lot less likely. Cool. I've also been watching, I guess I loaded a few of them in here. Can you even see that? Oh, it's so hard to see now. Oh,
Yeah.
you can. It's in there though. But I wondered like if they'd like wiggle around or whatever, but honestly, they kind of just sit pretty content. And that's just honestly going to be great for putting your hook on because they're not wiggling around in there. You're not having to aim. Like you said, it's like a very quick thing. Cool. Okay. So I was wondering, even though you already did this, if you can show us just one more time from the sifting to the loading, because I think that people are going to be super excited about this. And one of the reasons is when we talk about the Ice Fishing Expo coming up, that is in December. And so I know right now we are not even at Halloween and talking about Christmas seems crazy. But what happens is the expo comes around or December comes around and all of a sudden, I don't know if Josh does too, but I, for some reason, get a ton of Facebook messages. And then people are always like, what do I get my fishing friend or my fishing partner for Christmas? Like they have one of everything though. And this, I would say this is that gift, right? Because
we don't have this one yet.
they don't have this. Yeah.
You only can get them at one place.
Yeah. So this is a fabulous answer to the question. And actually, as you were doing this, did I see that they even come in different colors?
Yep. We have like on the website, we have green, this fluorescent green, this fluorescent orange, have some yellow. Tried a few of the different colors like blue here. I don't know if you guys in Wisconsin will appreciate this, but I even have some gold and purple ones. But I was a NDSU, so we were green and gold too. So
yeah.
I was gonna tease you for being a Vikings fan, but you're not from Minnesota either.
Well, we're close enough. We have some good rivalries up here. We're an opportunist state in North Dakota, so
yeah.
Oh my gosh, awesome. Okay, so for people who are going to be visiting the booth, what they are going to see is all of your different products out. And then do you actually have wax worms there to show people?
I usually have them there because it's kind of funny. I show them the device and they're kind of like, well, that's cool, but you got to put them in there. And then I show them the speed loader and I said, did you time me? Like I just did, on the show. And they just shake their head and they, what next? It's kind of funny. So I should actually get some cameras and just get people's reaction if they've never seen it before. It's pretty hilarious. So I guess that's what's been feeding me. It's not like I'm making money on this right now, but that's what's feeding me. So
Oh my gosh, that's so fun. Okay, so I don't mean to put you on the spot, but is it possible to show us the demo one more time?
Yeah, sure. Well, I've got just happen to have another container here, so
Oh, perfect.
let's adjust my camera down again.
Perfect.
So, and then the other important part, if you want to, you can pick your weapon, and a lot of different hooks, right? So, and then if you go out and just search, on YouTube, just search BAITLOAD. There's one out there with system, and it'll show you me loading a bunch of different hooks and stuff on there. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I already have some in the bottom here, but let's just put another container in. So I dump it in the top. So these are the 24 count ones. And, I designed it to fit in that existing container, and it holds 22 around there. So it's kind of like loading 22 shells, but it just happened that's how many I could fit around there, 22 of them. And you can put your spares in the middle compartment if you want to.
Oh, I already did mine opposite of you, but that's okay. I think this is actually still going to work out.
Yeah. So anyway, sometimes you get bigger chunk sawdust and smaller. I also have different screens. And if you have any other bait types like mealworms or other worms that you want a bigger grate, those are available too. So I've got them sifted here, right? So, again, I'm going to dump these ones back out of here and put them back in here. So I can manually load them one at a time. And if we want head up or head down, whatever you do, at least you can control that. But for the speed loader, so let's just take this and plug it in here. So see this spot right here? There's that spot right here that keys into the closed position here. So those two spots, I put those together first, if you can see that. And then I just rotate it in. It should snap in place. And then I push down on this valve to make sure it's sealing up around there so they don't fall in the middle. And then I'll dump my sifted worms in there. And if you overload them, you're just gonna, they'll double up in the slots. And just roll around. I just roll around and tap on the table a little bit like that. Try to get one each slot. But again, you don't have to work too hard at it because you can easily move them, right? So they're unloaded. I got a pretty full load. There's a couple empty slots. I'm just going to slide a couple of these over and drop them in the empty slots. And now I'm going to pull out my other doubles. There's one more empty slot there. And again, we're loaded. Put my cover on. Put it in ready for the fridge, ready for when I go fishing. So another trick I was in the boat and
okay, that worked honestly like way better. I wish you guys at home could see all of the slots that are full.
Did you load yours too at the same time?
I did, yeah. As you were walking through,
That's
I had
Emily's first time loading that.
One side one that kind of fell out, but like you're saying, like they're like basically straight up and down. So I literally just dropped it in like the little hole next to it, and that like could not have been easier. You guys, I have like, okay, obviously you can see my little stragglers. Like you mentioned, there might be some doubled up, but you guys, almost. I'm wishing I could show, like literally. Oh, let me tip it. Look at how many of those are full, you guys. I didn't even try that hard. And they're wiggly. Look at that. And they even still went in.
Yep. So another thing too, when you're on the boat and you run out, you don't have to take this over your neck. You just unsnap it and replace your cartridge.
Nice.
You probably can't see at home. There's like little dark spots and light spots. I can see very clearly here. And so as I'm looking at this, it's not even like I'm trying to guess as how many worms are still in here. Like you're able to just like really like look at that and have a quick glance of like, I'm like more than 3/4 here. That's cool.
Huh. So yeah, so those are the gadgets, we still have ambitions for other bait types, but we started with wax worms because that's what's an immediate need, and it worked well. And so, but the IP that we have covers any bait type. So my buddies want me to do one for squids. We can go deep sea fishing, but but anyway,
that one might not be pocket sized.
Yeah, that would be a big cartridge, but same concept. So.
Oh my gosh.
leeches, minnows. There's a lot of fun to have yet. So
Andrew is asking if they freeze easier when they are in this little container versus like mixed into the sawdust.
if you have them in your pocket, though, they should be fine if it's in the inner pocket, so they're not getting cold. Um, once you take it out, if the wind's blowing, you want to be quick, get it back in. And the other thing is, if you're out for a day fishing, if they freeze that day, they're still probably going to be effective. They're still got the good stuff. They're not black yet. When they're black, I don't use them. But even if they did freeze a little bit and you can still get them on your hook, you're probably okay. But it's a function of how long. The biggest thing is if you have it around your neck and you're pulling it in out of your coveralls, you got to remember to put it back in there after you get your hook. So.
Okay, the other thing that I would go out on a limb and say is like, I'm looking at, and I know you can't see in this cup, that's why I'm like going to pour it. Like, how much sawdust was that? Like, really barely anything. One piece almost fell on my keyboard. Don't tell Josh. But how much sawdust is in there? Like, really not that much. So I wonder if this even has any insulation property. Like, I would go out on a limb. I'm not a scientist, but I would say, honestly, they're probably not colder in here than in like this tiny amount of sawdust. So if you have like a bait shop that really packs them in, tucks them in, reads them a bedtime story before they sell them to you to have the fish bite, like, cool, maybe that makes a difference. But I would say the way that I bought them today would probably, this container, you can't really see. It's like, look at that. It's like not even a third full. I know the light is reflecting. That's hard to see, but funny.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So, one of the things, I guess, now that we've talked about all of this, I have to stop and appreciate that in the moment when you were out near Christmas with freezing cold fingers, and even though your fingers didn't work, clearly your brain did, because I'm not sure if I would have been able to come up with a product like this. So first of all, kudos for being an inventor and like making that happen.
It's just, you have a time to think when you're out fishing, I guess. So.
When you're avoiding too many holiday festivities with the family.
Well, I got to church on time. We're good.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. I just always like to, point out when something is like somebody's invention, because so often in the fishing world or as anglers, and we're out there and we're like, man, if only. And I think people always assume that inventions are for somebody else. Is that a weird way to put that? And so I always love when somebody is able to like take an idea and create it and like make it something, and then even present it to others, because all of those steps are way harder than people realize.
It's for me, it was just one thing led to another. And if I hadn't had the COVID opportunity that, I learned something during that 2 weeks in the evenings that, I would have probably never taken the time to do this had I not had a 3D printer there not being used. But when I 3D printed my prototypes, these little ears were too fragile and they'd break off. So this is injection molded. This is a very durable plastic. You're not going to break that. Try it. You're not going to break that, right? And that's a high-end plastic on that one. And this is a nylon cover. So these gray parts are dishwasher safe, so if it gets gross, you can throw it in the dishwasher if your wife will let you. Remember,
okay,
just
I'll be honest, I tried to be
honey.
part of that. That is pretty strong.
But the colored stuff you see here, it's all still 3D printed. So this is warm water, only hot water would warp it. So it's not dishwasher safe, but you can wash it with warm water. So.
Oh, awesome. I just feel like, okay, maybe with waxies and just like sawdust, maybe it won't need to be washed all that often. We'll find out.
Yeah. That's for sure.
You're like, we'll go with that. Okay, cool. So as far as right now and people like watching at home and all of that, is this something that is available online, on a Facebook page, on a website somewhere? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I have a Facebook page. It's, just search BAITLOAD, and there's a website link on there, but this is I don't know if it's showing up, but a QR code will go to my website. Is it too much glare on that?
I imagine, actually, I'm going to try it. Oh no, I totally just scanned it.
Did it go?
Yep.
Here there.
Perfect.
So on there, you can, the kits and the different product that we have is on there. So, so it's available and available to order. And, like I say, if you still have the pontoon or still have the boat on the lake, there's some great fall fishing yet. And it's not too late to try it out before the ice.
Yeah.
So, it's a sad day when you have to pull the boat off. So, but then again, then it's just waiting for ice fishing. That's a good thing that there's some deer hunting and some pheasant hunting in between there. So.
Yeah. Bridge the gap a little.
Yep.
I'm just laughing that you were talking about it's a sad day when you pull the boat, because you are not wrong, but it's also for me like a scary day, because Josh and I always like push it and like the edges of the lakes are like really starting to freeze up, and we're like, we should probably just launch one more time.
I hear you.
Funny. So for people who, well, I guess whether they're fishing or not doesn't really matter, because they might still be interested in this. And when we are in that awkward season, when it isn't open water, but ice isn't quite here, that is when the expos are starting to go on. And so the nice thing about that is no matter where you are located, at least across the upper Midwest or ice belt, there are shows that are going to be close to you, and hopefully your hometown. So I know all the way things from Sioux Falls to Wisconsin and even beyond. Which shows are you going to?
Well, I'm signed up for the Sioux Falls show, but that's opener rifle season in North Dakota. And my son got a muley buck tag, so I have to figure out what I'm going to do there yet.
Send someone else to the booth.
That was a good show. There's the Hardwater Ice Show in Minneapolis, the St. Paul Ice Fishing Show, and then of course the Oshkosh, or the Wisconsin Ice Fishing Show. So those are the big ones I'm signed up for yet between now and the end of the year. So
nice.
That is
looking forward
great.
to those. A little bit of road time, but that's good road time.
Yeah.
It is good road time. And well, I guess maybe, can I still call you like a little bit new to the show scene? Like you've been like a few years now, right? But it gets to a point where it starts to be like family reunion each year.
Yeah. You see familiar vendors. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
One other thing, I might try a reptile show.
Oh.
Because a lot of people feed reptiles waxworms because they're real fatty, but you don't want to feed them too much because some reptiles can get sores because they're too fatty. But that's why fish like them, because they're very fatty.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was told. So.
Okay, but interesting point though, because if you wanted to like single dispense worms and not have to dig through a mess, or even just the sifter alone, like for people who are constantly feeding pets, that's actually a cool idea. So, man, fun connection. Cool. So for people at home that want to check out that product, all of these different products, review or rewind this video like, I don't know, a whole minute or something, and scan that QR code. Otherwise we will get the website link and I will post it into the comment section probably when this video is done, because sometimes Josh multitasks, but I can't do that many things at once. So
yeah, it says www.baitload.com.
Oh, perfect. You know what? I'll just type it. So I know that everyone is going to be able to click on that and just go and check that out. So if you're watching Facebook, YouTube, other places, that should be there for you. Otherwise, easy enough to type in yourself, just like you said. And ultimately come and see all of us at the expos, because this is a really fun thing to see. And maybe even try yourself, right? But ultimately, that's one of the things that's going to help get us out under the water, and we are excited for that.
So I have some homework for you guys, right?
Oh.
Try out
ready.
Kit and let me know what you think.
Well, okay, I'm not just saying this because we're like live on the video or anything, but I would say I'm honestly already impressed. Part of my concern, honestly, is that this was going to be difficult because the worms are like wiggly and all that kind of stuff. I also I don't know. I guess I have no reason to think that it was going to be difficult, but I will be honest with you. That was my initial reaction. So, if you saw me doing that here, and I know it was kind of below camera angle, I was trying to hold it up a little bit. It's kind of tough to remember, but honestly, I don't even have like shavings on my desktop. This wasn't a mess. This was my first time going through it, and I was honestly really impressed. I'm definitely going to do this again. So,
a little trick if you're doing it in the house, I always use a paper plate.
I'm just ruthlessly gonna have to clean my husband's keyboard. I'm kidding. It's like I said, made almost no mess. I don't at all regret. I mean, the plate is, you're right. That is a great idea. An old newspaper, whatever, put that down. It's great. I had no problem otherwise. Oh my gosh. Oh gosh. Cool. If anybody has any other questions or comments or things along the way, put that in our comment section, because even though we are kind of summing up here this evening, we are here to always still answer your questions and touch base. And whatever we can't answer in the comment section, we know that we're going to be able to answer at the Wisconsin Ice Fishing Expo. So really looking forward to that. And Mark, thank you so much for being here tonight to talk all about this and give us all these demonstrations. And to be honest, it was really a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Right.
thanks, Mark.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Josh, thank you for tuning in, or being here, I guess, even though you are on a work business trip. So this was a little bit unconventional, but it was fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I said, yeah.
Oh, okay. It sounded like you were going to say more. And to everybody at home, thank you guys for being here as well, because that is always a big part of the fun. And like we said at the beginning of the show, we are going to be here Tuesdays and Thursdays all the way through to the expo time. It might be products, it might be people or guides or different things, but everything that we talk about here will be at that expo. So we're looking forward to talking about that, and we're looking forward to seeing you at the Wisconsin Ice Fishing Expo.
Night, everybody.
Thanks for having me.